don't know me, my name is Carol Smith. I'm the director of this very fine library, and this is my awesome partner in crime, Anita Maestas, who runs the Casa Center right next door to the library. I'm not going to speak for very long, but there's a few things that I want to let you know. It's hard to believe that we're only halfway through Cesar Chavez. In my book, the very best things in life come about when people come together through collaboration and teamwork because they have shared terms in mind. Louder? Really?
Yeah.
I have a mic I can use.
They haven't stopped talking because they can't hear you.
All right, I'm going to talk louder. I'm going to project.
Maybe use the mic?
I could use it. I'm not going to use the mic. No.
Way back there. Okay.
The amazing events of Cesar Chavez Week have come about because of a partnership between the Casa Center and the Nielsen Library and a whole lot of other people who came together to further support this week that I want to tell you about. Every year, the Casa Center celebrates Cesar Chavez Day all week long. And every year it gets bigger and bigger because that's how Anita operates. And last year, the Nielsen Library was awarded a National Endowment for the Humanities and American Libraries Association grant to bring a year of programming to the Valley on Latino American culture and heritage. And we decided to use that grant to celebrate the culture and heritage right here in our valley because it's such an amazing culture and heritage. And a lot of people know I've been here less than 3 years, and I feel like I'm going to be here a lifetime, and I'm still going to be learning. Monday night, I learned so much from listening to our community. But Anita and I realized pretty fast that we could put the two together, right? Peanut butter and chocolate, right? So Cesar Chavez Week, Nielsen Library programming, and we could do something great. And once we started sharing that, other program sponsors came on board. The Sangre de Cristo National Heritage Area came to us with a more than matching, very generous grant so that we could make this program even better. And then several recipients of Unidos grants on campus said, hey, we'd like to throw our money into that as well. And so it kept getting bigger and bigger. And I just want to thank all of those program sponsors because they're the ones that have made it possible to bring in our guests. I'm going to turn it over to Anita so she can talk about what's coming up for the rest of Cesar Chavez Week.
So first of all, thank you so much for being here this evening and choosing to spend this time with us here. And we want to welcome all of our wonderful guest speakers from the Sociedad Protección Mútua de Trabajadores Unidos, which started in Antonito in the 1900s. And I'm learning this stuff every year that we do this. And so I am so honored to be in the presence of these three gentlemen. And we're going to let them talk more about themselves and what they do and their representation for the Sociedad. And Thursday, tomorrow night, so after tonight, as if tonight wasn't, this whole week has been great. And my students were saying, Miss, it's only Wednesday. And I'm like, oh yeah, tomorrow's Thursday, and the band's coming tomorrow. So today was Orno cooking day for us. So we've been up since 4 a.m. this morning because we had to start the Orno fires at 5 because you have to heat the Ornos for about 5 hours so that we can cook for the next 8 to 9 hours. So if you drive through the library parking lot, you're going to get to the stop sign, look to your right. That is our Cultural Awareness and Student Achievement Center. Our acronym is CASA, so we're known as the CASA Center. And you're going to see our Ornos in the backyard. Right now, those Ornos have leg of lamb, pulled pork. They have leg of well, cabrito or goat. So we have cabrito, borreguito. We have, I guess those are it. Pulled pork, beef, lamb, and goat cooking in the Ornos right now for tomorrow night's event. So we did our first big cook today. We will get up and do the same thing again tomorrow morning. And so if you want to drive by and see the magic, we will be pulling the meats out after the event. So if you just want to stop by and just check it out, that's fine. But we really want you to come to tomorrow's event because tomorrow is the real eating event. So tomorrow in our Casa Center backyard where the Ornos are, we are selling tickets, and the tickets include your meal of beef or pulled pork from the Ornos. They include a lamb sampler. We butchered an entire lamb, and it's getting spit roasted Greek style at our Greek restaurant. So we have a lot of sponsors doing some of the work for us because we outgrew our Ornos already, and we have 2 of them. And so we have to have restaurant help with that. And so tomorrow you're going to get all those wonderful meats roasted. You're going to get a side of borracho beans, dessert, and we're serving bottled water because we're a dry campus. So after we eat in the Casa Center backyard, we're going to walk Huelga style, Cesar Chavez way, down the back cement, I guess. We're taking the view through Faculty Drive, and we're going to end up in this Plaquey Field House where the Latin Jazz band Nosotros will be performing, because the band has to be warm, and I think it's going to be a little cold tomorrow night. So we'll have the weather pending. We're planning on serving in the Casa backyard, band in the Plaquey Field House. Once we're done eating and serving, we're going to have locations to eat outside at the Casa. If it's too cold, we'll fit as many people as we can inside the Casa, and then the rest we'll have tables set up at the Plaquey Field House. So we have 3 locations where you can sit and eat your meal. They'll be in to-go boxes, so they'll stay warm and closed, and then you can carry your meal wherever you would like to sit and eat. So I have tickets with me tonight. They look like this. Although the price went up today at noon, I will honor any $10 tickets that you might need for tomorrow's event. They're $10 a piece. It includes the meal and the concert. So buy your tickets tonight. Friday, we're making horno bread. So I have the best bread baker in all of the Four Corners area, in my opinion. Her name is Bertha Garcia. She's coming from the Santo Domingo Pueblo, and she's going to be baking, well, we have 30 loaves left that we haven't sold yet, out of 175 loaves of bread, all gone, sold already. So she'll be baking bread, and I've already reserved about 20 to serve for lunch on Friday. So come and join us for bread with melted butter and capulin jelly. And I just found out I only have like 13 jars, half pints of capulin jelly left. We're already almost sold out. And I think I have maybe 19 jars of the pints left. So you have to order now because it's first come, first serve. And if we run out, my jelly maker has been making jelly for the last 13 days because we ordered 7 cases from her. So that's tomorrow and Friday.
We're never, yeah.
Oh, tomorrow,
Yes.
5 p.m., we have our guest speaker
Dr. Ramon Castillo.
from Metro State University of Denver, who will be talking to us. So you're going to hear the talk tomorrow, and while he's talking, I'm prepping all of the good food that's going to be coming out of our hornos. So then from the 5 o'clock presentation, you'll be filled with knowledge, and then we want to fill your tummies, and then we have to go dance off all the good horno food with the band. So yes, starts at 5 o'clock, 6:30 is the food.
Yep.
And
It's going to be a great concert. You're never hungry at Casa House, let me tell you. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our guest tonight. We are going to be hearing about the fascinating history and ongoing work of the
Sociedad, Protección, Mútua de Trabajadores, Unidos.
SPMDTU. We have with us tonight, we have Rogelio Briones of the SPMDTU, Vice President of the SPMDTU, Miguel Sisneros, and we have visiting guest Dr. Jose Rivera, who is a research scholar at the Center for Regional Studies at the University of New Mexico, and we're just going to turn it over to them. So, thank you, everyone.
I have Cesar Chavez bracelets for anyone who might like one. You can pass those around if you like.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos. ¿Cómo están todos? Me llamo Miguel Sisneros. Soy el presidente del Concilio Local número 1 en Antonito, Colorado. Además, soy el vicepresidente del Concilio Superior SPMDTU. And we want to thank you for being here tonight. When I joined the SPMDTU as a kid running around in Antonito, throwing rocks, there really wasn't much to do in Antonito. We used to see the SPMDTU and we'd go hide behind a building, and we had a little acronym for what we thought the SPMDTU stood for. And we thought SPMDTU stood for Some Poor Mexican Died Tied Up. That's the truth, though. Later in life did I find out that was somewhat the truth. And that's why, in part, the SPMDTU was founded in the year 1900. So, my friend Rogelio here, he put up different meaning for that. Some proud Mexicanos decided to unite. I think that's even more so the truth. But with that, I would like to introduce my colleagues. We'll let them introduce themselves. Go ahead. Maybe how long they've been with the SPMDTU.
Yeah, I'm Rogelio Briones, past Presidente Superior in 2001, 2005. I joined the SPMDTU thanks to Herman Martinez in August 1st, 1978. That's a long time ago. So I'm I'm probably the longest tenured member here, whatever that's worth. Hermano Jose, and then the rest of the hermanos and hermanas that are here, you should stand up and introduce yourself. Hermano Jose.
Jose Rivera. I'm a member of Concilio in Nambe, and I teach at the University of New Mexico.
Hermano, no, go ahead.
My name is Jean Gonzalez from the Concilio número 19 aquí en Alamosa, and I am the calificador superior.
I'm Felix Lopez, and I joined around 2004, and I'm the vice president of Concilio número 1 in Antonito, and also the treasurer for the Concilio Superior Council.
Training Rivera. I joined in 2008.
Any other hermanos or hermanas?
There is somebody that I would like to acknowledge tonight. That is our president. Her name is Vicky Fresquez from Concilio número 7 in Denver. What's neat about Hermana Vicky, other than her being a great person and a good leader for the SPMDTU, she is the first female to ever have that chair in the history of the organization, which was founded in the year 1900. It's about time, so we should acknowledge that. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Hermano Rogelio. He's going to start our program. And
Thank you. My contribution to this presentation is, I'm gonna, if you will allow me, like if you had a choice, to read el preámbulo de la Sociedad en español. Y tienen copias en inglés. You have copies in English. You know, some people might ask, well, how does the SPMDTU relate to Cesar Chavez week? But I think a presentation of the SPMDTU is very apropos, because just like Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez were organizing and empowering the communities, the farm worker communities in California, South Texas, parts of Arizona, Nuevo Mexico, and even here in the valley, they try to organize here in the valley. But anywhere where the migrant stream of farm workers took them to up to the Midwest, to Michigan, and you know, that's where Dolores and Cesar tried to organize and empower. Well, the founders of the SPMDTU in 1900 were doing the same thing. They were organizing the communities and they were empowering the communities. So I want to begin by reading the preamble in Espanol, because I think succinctly and directly it encapsulates the reasons why the society was founded. These words were written in 1911. If there's any typos, you have to remember they didn't have word presses in the 1911. No, wait a minute, I retyped those words, so if there's typos, it's on me. So anyway, here we go. Ay, ya le di una patada al micrófono. Bueno, déjame ver. El preámbulo. Deseando los firmados al fin de este preámbulo, formar una sociedad legalmente constituida y amparada bajo las leyes de los Estados Unidos de América y del estado de Colorado en particular, nos hemos reunido y de común acuerdo determinamos lo siguiente: formar una sociedad fraternal incorporada bajo las leyes del estado de Colorado y que lleve por nombre Sociedad Protección Mútua de Trabajadores Unidos, con cabecera principal en la Plaza de Antonito, Condado de Conejos, Estado de Colorado, Estados Unidos de América, y que dicha sociedad quede establecida para los fines que enseguida se exponen. Considerando que todas las naciones civilizadas del mundo tienen formadas sociedades fraternales y agrupaciones doneas para la protección, ilustración y progreso de los miembros que las forman, y deseando nosotros entrar en el camino de la prosperidad, del adelanto y de la luz, hacemos con la incorporación una reforma de gran importancia a la sociedad que lleva el mismo nombre que la que hoy incorporamos y que fue fundada el 26 de noviembre, Anno Domini 1900, por el honorable Celedonio Mondragón. Todos los miembros de pie. As a way to honor the founder, every time his name is invoked, we stand in his honor. Okay. Para proseguir en los mismos fines para la que fue constituida originalmente, es decir, para la protección de cada uno de los miembros que la forman y ayudando a sus miembros desválidos y necesitados, a sus viudas y huérfanos y a todas aquellas personas que por algún vínculo de consanguinidad estén unidas con alguna persona de esta sociedad, para mitigar los estragos y los sinsabores de la vida, para protegerse contra las injusticias de los tiranos y de los déspotas, los usurpadores de la ley y de la justicia, de los ladrones de vidas, honra y intereses, para estrecharnos las manos de hermanos en medio de nuestras alegrías, de nuestras dichas, de nuestras desgracias y nuestros martirios, para caminar por el rudo camino de la vida con los ojos empapados con las lágrimas de la alegría, con la sonrisa verdadera en nuestros labios y con la frente levantada con el laurel del triunfo y de la humanidad. Y así prosiguiendo en nuestra vida, llevaremos grabada en nuestro corazón la fe segura de que hay una madre tierna y cariñosa que se llama Sociedad, Protección, Mútua, que en nuestra última hora de existencia nos impartirá los auxilios bienhechores que toda madre pródiga al fruto de su vientre. Y ya en nuestra última morada regará nuestro sepulcro con las lágrimas del consuelo y plantará la siempre viva fraternal. Considerando que para que esta sociedad sea estable y duradera, es requerido sujetarla a una constitución y reglamento de las leyes de esta república. Hemos tomado carta de incorporación y de autoridad en el estado de Colorado, así como también hemos hecho nuestra constitución, leyes y regulaciones, las que en otro lugar de este libro estamparemos y por las cuales seremos gobernados. Y fue firmada por A.F. Márquez, Epifanio García y Eligio Rival. Mike?
And that's why I joined. Eligio Rival, that's my great-great-grandfather. I didn't even know. I knew he was my great-grandfather. I didn't even know he was part of this Sociedad. That's in part another reason why I joined, is because the younger generation, those that were born in the 80s like myself, they don't understand what the SPMDTU is or why. All they know is that it's the building that, if you're familiar with Antonito, we have a local character called Leroy Brown. That's just the building that Leroy Brown holds up and leans on all day. My grandma says we used to go roller skating there when she was a kid. We used to go to dances there. I mean, there was even times they said, maybe we should break in there to see what's in there, because it was secretive, you know. But that's the reason why I joined, so that way this important organization doesn't die and just become a memory. It's important that we get younger members. it's very important to the ongoing of the society. So once I read that Eligio Rival was a member, I'm in. How do I get in? Then I found Hermano Rogelio, and he showed me the way, I guess you could say. But with that, I'll turn it over to Hermano Jose Rivera. He did a wonderful job putting this book together. I wasn't a member when the idea of this book came to light. Maybe before Hermano Jose starts, I'll let Rogelio or Hermano Jose explain that. But before we start that, if anybody has any questions at all or would like to interject, please do. Let's keep this a formal conversation. We don't want to have it too regimented or whatnot.
Informal.
And
So
help us
chime in, interrupt, add, subtract, correct.
So tell us about the book and the idea.
Very briefly, we were coming out of the Chicano movement at the end of the 70s. And we said to ourselves, okay, we need to do a community project. That's one of the philosophies of the Chicano movement, was to go back, educate yourself and go back and do something for your community. So we were thinking about the people in San Luis were fighting for La Sierra, and I have a lot of respect. They're my heroes. They succeeded in gaining some of their rights back to use the land the way it was meant to be. So they were doing that, so it was Plácido Gomez, another member from Concilio 19 here in Alamosa, that said, you know what? The SPMDTU has a lot of potential. So that's why we decided to do a video documentary, and Hermano Jose helped us at that time. This was in like 82, huh?
I think a little later.
Around that 82, 84. We wrote the grant to the Endowment for the Humanities, but we didn't get funded. We got some good reviews, but we didn't make the money. So it kind of lay dormant. Hermano Plácido went on to law school. I went to teach in San Luis, so kind of. But then, like in 90, 95, I said to myself, self. I talked to myself quite a bit. But anyway, I said, well, we need to revive this. And if we can't do a documentary, then we should do a photo essay. So Daniel Salazar, a photographer from Denver, I dragged him out. The Concilio Superior gave us $500. Our council, El Concilio Adobe de Oro here in Alamosa, gave us another $500. We had $1,000, and we just started photographing. We just started in the valley, and we found all the properties that are still standing, and we photographed all the members that are still. A lot of them are gone already. Ya murieron, ya pasaron la vida. So anyway, we got this portrait, these photographs, and we said, well, what are we going to do with them? And it was Hermano Jose that said, well, approach Tobias Duran, Dr. Tobias Duran, at the Center for Regional Studies at UNM. And I go, hey, help us publish a book, be the second book. We have copies of the first that was written in
1954.
Completely in Spanish. So well, we need to do another. So Dr. Tobias Duran said, yeah, I will subsidize the printing of the book. It's quite expensive. And he put us in contact with UNM Press, very prestigious press, well known throughout the world. And then he assigned Dr. Jose Rivera. I said, you do the research. So Hermano Jose now is probably the historian of the society because he did all the research. But that's how the idea of the book came about, and we're glad that we were able to preserve that in printed form. Because a lot of these hermanos and hermanas, they're not around anymore. So with that, Hermano Jose, go ahead.
Gracias, hermano. Hermano Rogelio Briones has been retired for some time now. I won't
10
mention
years.
how many. 10, a decade. That's a long time.
Yeah.
But his memory is still sharp. A little while ago, when he started to give the origins of the book project, he correctly said the first time, 1982, and I interjected a little bit. I said, or a little later. He said, or 84. You were correct, 1982. I remember that distinctly because that was my first year as a professor at the University of New Mexico. I had just been hired as the director of the Southwest Hispanic Research Institute. And I saw the proposal that Hermano Briones and Hermano Plácido Gomez had put together to the National Endowment for the Arts, correct?
Right.
And they showed it to me,
The
and they said,
humanities.
well, we tried to, get this funded, it was not funded. And so I read the abstract of it, and believe it or not, that abstract of that proposal written by the hermanos became this book, because that really had the outline and the sketch of the timeline for the society. It took a while to get it written. I believe we started it about 2001, and one of the first things that Hermano Rogelio suggested to me, who had just been commissioned to be the one to author the book and do the historical research, was he said, well, you need to become a member, because you need to come to the concilios locales, you need to come to the convenciones del Concilio Superior, you need to talk and, interview members and so forth. So I did. I joined in about 2001, went to the first convention in Denver, 2002. And there's some more interviews that had already been started by Hermano Briones and Hermano Daniel Salazar from Denver, the photographer for the book and co-author of the book as well. And he was the interviewer along with Hermano Briones. So that's how the book, came about. But let me talk about, some of the themes that are in the book and why it is significant in the context of the social and economic times of the period. We're talking about the period essentially 1878 to about 1935. That was a period of great change in this San Luis Valley, okay, and also throughout Taos County and northern New Mexico as a whole. I think you might know that in the colonial period, everything north of La Bajada. Anybody know where La Bajada is in New Mexico? Okay.
South of Santa Fe.
Yeah, it's south of Santa Fe.
We go there.
Everything north, and it's literally, es una subida de allá para acá y una bajada de aquí para allá, ¿verdad? Al sur. Anyway, de ahí para arriba, everything north of there was called El Rio Arriba, including what is now the Southwest Valley. So it was really, really a cultural homeland, for our people. It said 1878, there was a game changer, that we could call it, right? And that was the introduction of the railroad. And it came right here in Alamosa in 1878. Because prior to this, the economy here was subsistence agriculture and subsistence ranching by people in the land grants and by people, other landowners that farmed and had ranches in this area of El Rio Arriba, ¿verdad? In northern New Mexico and southern Colorado. Well, in 1878, the railroad changed all of that. It was now going to turn into a sort of like a more industrial, kind of period in the economy that required labor, required workers. And clearly the construction of the railroad itself on Torito Junction and the Chile line, from Española to here, and all the way up, connected to other rail lines all the way up to Denver. A lot of people had to be hired to build that railroad. At the same time, with the railroad, it now became profitable to open up new mines, like in Platoro, nearby here in Conejos County. That was another major source of employment. Other mines throughout southern Colorado as well. And then, of course, the agriculture here, the commercial agriculture, that also needed labor. So the subsistence farmers, ranchers in the land grants at that time then started to also become wage earners in these new industries. They still held on to their land. They had lost the commons, los ejidos, pero tenían todavía sus suertes, ¿verdad? The parcel of land that was still in the family, basically the acequia down to the river, the irrigated parcels, they were able to hold on to those and still own them. Many of the families or descendants of those families still own them. Go to San Luis, for example, and you'll see many of those long lots, that are on the Culebra and other streams in that area, and of course throughout New Mexico as well, northern New Mexico. So by participating in this new wage economy, that doesn't mean that they were able to prosper, to a large extent because their wages were low. They were not covered by unemployment compensation. They were not covered by health and accident or other regulatory agencies that we have today. And plus, they were discriminated. Typically, the people from here and from New Mexico were paid less than other workers that came in from other parts of the United States. And so there was an exploitation of that labor, discrimination in the labor force, and no protections. These were all dangerous occupations. You can imagine when laying down the track, you know, el traque. People used to say that, que van a ir a trabajar en el traque, you know, to work in the railroad. Or in agriculture, venían a La Papa here in Montevista, or El Betabel in the Arkansas Valley. So these were names that New Mexicans and people from here, those were the places where they went to work. But those were, you know, occupations that there were accidents sometimes, there were injuries, and then of course there were times when people were not able to work due to illness or other you know, health conditions. So that was kind of like the setting, the economic and social setting that led to the establishment of this organization. We subtitled the book Guardians of Hispanic Culture Along the Rio Grande. That's kind of like saying that same geography that I was describing earlier of El Rio Arriba, or in northern New Mexico, southern Colorado. And if you notice the Hermano Briones' t-shirt here, when he turns around, it has that there, the Guardiantes de la Cultura. Turns out that for the 100th anniversary in the year 2000, I was not a member yet, but the hermanos here, several of them were, that became sort of like the slogan, if you will, of the 100th anniversary of the organization, and that's why we happen to include it in the title. Now, we know that, as was said earlier, the complete name is fairly long, Sociedad Protección Mútua de Trabajadores Unidos, okay, SPMDTU. Now, of course, we feature that all over the book, but we also then, as the main title for the book, called it La Sociedad, because that's one of the things that you hear among the members, and certainly when I became a new member in the year 2001, I quickly picked up on that people talked, the members at that time, and still do, in shorthand, that's what they call this SPMDTU. They call it La Sociedad. And so we say in the book here, it really has two meanings. It's certainly La Sociedad because of the organization. Those are the first two words of the organization name. But it's also because of a people. These were, in those times, a group of people. They used to call themselves also Nuestro Pueblo. They were basically a self-defined cultural group. This was their homeland. And that's how they self-described, was Nuestro Pueblo, you know, our homeland, our place. And so that La Sociedad has that meaning as well, you know, basically the people, la gente, la sociedad. One of the very basic functions initially was like many other fraternal societies around the country, you know, was the idea of having a burial fund. You know, in those days, funeral homes and other kinds of, or health insurance, you know, was not readily accessible to people from this valley or from northern New Mexico. And so that was one of the needs at the time. They had learned that as well, you know, from the other societies, la Sociedad Piadosa de Nuestro Padre Jesús Nazareno, sometimes referred to as los penitentes, ¿verdad? There's penitente societies, you know, here in southern Colorado and in northern New Mexico as well. And so this idea of having even the membership themselves, you know, los hermanos, right? Hermanos penitentes, well, la sociedad también, hermanos, you know, hermanas, hermanos. The idea of prayers, you know, the idea of conducting velorios, you know, for when a member deceases. The idea of supporting widows and orphans, as was said in the preambulo, ¿verdad? That was also something that the penitente societies did. The idea of keeping their minutes and their treasurer's reports in journals and record books that still survive, both for penitente societies, many of them, and certainly for the SPMDTU, which, by the way, the society decided when Presidente Briones, he was president for, I think, 4 years or longer, decided to preserve these records in these books and these journals, and so they made arrangements with the University of New Mexico to house them in a archive there. That's where the records are. In terms of the founder, you know, we have many portraits of the founder that different artists or photographers have captured. And I hold this up because I did meet Cesar Chavez. I was part of the National Association of Farm Worker Organizations, and this was a coalition of farm worker programs that throughout the country, in Michigan, in Texas, in New Mexico, Colorado, California, and throughout the country. It was a program to provide job training and supportive services to farm workers throughout the country. And I was on the board of directors at that time, and Cesar Chavez hosted a meeting for us at his headquarter ranch in California. And I always say, when I met him and the talk that he gave us and so forth, that I don't know if I ever met a saint, but if I have, it was Cesar Chavez. It was Cesar Chavez. He was just so humble a man, so humble a person, and so inspiring as to just the way he talked. Very innocent in many ways, yet he was a man that led the famous struggle of providing union and wage support and protection for the farm workers, not only in California, but throughout the United States. That was his mission in life. And so I say that because I, of course, never got to know the founder of the organization, Celedonio Mondragon.
Are you going to keep doing this? We might as well stay stationed.
Exercise.
Okay. So, you know, none of us got to know him because he was president more than a century ago in 1900. As we know, he was the founder. But what I read about him, other people had written biographies, the previous book by Hermano Timoteo Lopez, and so just the descriptions that they gave about him, I think the founder of this organization had the same qualities of Cesar Chavez. He was a man to unite. He was a man of empowerment, as was said earlier. He was a man of uniting to get the workers together into this union, you know, this mutual union, as it's called also. Okay, and also he believed that the strategy was one of nonviolence, just like Dr. Martin Luther King and just like Cesar Chavez. Gandhi. That was his approach. And that's why he founded this Sociedad, Protección Mútua de Trabajadores Unidos. The idea was that by pooling resources or combining resources, including financial resources, as we'll get a chance to talk about in a minute, you know, it was a very powerful idea. Just imagine, you know, that throughout northern New Mexico and southern Colorado and all the way to parts of Utah and eventually Denver, there were 65 local councils that were eventually established. You know, it took some time to get there, but that's the strength of the organization. It was really a regional association. There are other mutual aid societies of this kind, but most of them tend to be local. Well, this was in 3 states, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah. So he was born in 1863, right here in Conejos County. His parents, like many other parents of that time and grandparents, were from New Mexico. You know, it's the same people. Okay, so his parents were born in Cordova, New Mexico, near Chimayo. Anybody been at Chimayo? El Santuario, ¿verdad? Yeah, okay, so Cordova is right nearby. And that's where his own parents were born. Jose Antonio Mondragon, born in 1830, and then Maria Leonor Luján from Embudo, who was living in Truchas at the time. But by the time the founder was born, they lived here in Conejos County. By profession, he was a platero, basically a silversmith. You know, he made jewelry. He had a very solid business located in Santa Fe. Himself and 3 of his brothers, Narciso, Roman, and Pilar, were jewelers in Santa Fe. Now, Santa Fe, the capital city, and so that was a good business location. But many of his travels and customers also lived in Las Vegas, New Mexico, which at that time was a pretty bustling city in its own right. And so he traveled back and forth. And that's where he observed this struggle over land, the land grants, el honor de la tierra, nuestra tierra, up in the preámbulo, ¿verdad? And so those who would steal our land. And so he saw that happening, las gorras blancas and other, struggles at that time in northeast New Mexico. Yes.
According to the video documentary series La Raza de Colorado, and the head of Joaquin Murrieta by Valadez, within 10 years after the United States stole this land from indigenous people and from Mexico, within 10 years, this was 1948, within 10 years, 90% of the land was stolen. And the abuses were happening here. That's why these people, the founders, decided, wait a minute, we're losing our land. We were the first Western Europeans here, and now we're second-class citizens in our own homeland, We're strangers in our own homeland. This doesn't make sense. We build the acequias, we clear the land, we farm it, and, the new jurisprudence and the Anglos come in and they take the best land, and now we have to work for them, So I'm working in Platoro, and all of a sudden, a young Anglo comes in and he goes, hey, I'm your supervisor. And I go, wait a minute, I've been here 10 years, you just got here, you're my supervisor? That's the kind of abuses that were happening. This book, this piece written by Maria Mondragon from San Luis, and the San Luis Valley historian, it's good because it gives you the brief history of what was happening here in the valley, where our people would take the sheep out to graze out in the llanos, and racist Anglos would come and shoot all the sheep and shoot the people also, and nothing was done about it. If you don't believe it, look it up in the Alamosa newspaper at that time. So these were the abuses that were happening as to why these people decided to come together.
So at that time then, as was mentioned in the preamble also, on November 26, 1900, the founder hosted a meeting at his residence, and he was elected the first Presidente Superior. Other officers were Rafael Lucero, José Ramón Quintana, Andrés Trujillo, Juan Antonio Márquez, and Teodoro Trujillo, as well as Juan Filomeno Trujillo. Those were all the officers on the first board of directors. And their purpose was to unite wage workers to combat and work against discrimination in the regional industries, mining, timbering, railroad, commercial agriculture, by pooling their resources. Okay, I promised you I'd get back to that. Some of this was financial through a system of dues, like many membership-based organizations. They had dues. And so they financed their own programs. This was before government was doing this. Keep in mind that, Social Security and all the Franklin Delano Roosevelt programs of social insurance did not come about until the Depression in the 1930s. Well, here it is 30 years before that, and these members were establishing through from their own pocket and paying dues into the Sociedad and their local concilios to establish a program of social insurance for the members. Clearly for the burials that would happen from time to time, that's what the insurance was for, but also for other very innovative programs. They had a Fondo de Indigencia, basically emergency cash assistance. It's sort of like what some of the welfare departments, in different states provide now, emergency financial aid to people that need it. Well, the society had a fund specifically for that. They also had one for workers who were hospitalized or ill and not able to work. The industries would not pay them. If you missed work, you wouldn't get paid. We know that. Still happens probably in some industries. Okay, but in that time, none of these industries would pay if you didn't show up for work, if you were in the hospital, if you were, even if you were injured. Okay, they would not pay the days you did not show up for work. So here the society, out of their own pocket, through these dues, were able to have a fund, beneficios para enfermos is what they called it, basically paying workers for lost wages, essentially. Comisión sobre trabajos, my gosh, you know, powerful for its time, because it was basically an employment agency. It means literally what it says. There was a commission of usually about 3 members that would help members that were out of a job, because keep in mind, all these jobs were pretty much seasonal. Once the tracks were laid down, you were laid off. Once the mining shut down, you were laid off. Once the agricultural season was over for the winter, you were laid off. And so that's why they formed this Comisión sobre Trabajadores, basically like an employment agency, you know, and they helped to find jobs for the members who had been laid off. Then, of course, they had the beneficios de muerte, the burial fund, essentially. And later, a more formalized policy of health insurance. Hermano Briones was there during the peak of that period. Health policies of $1,000, $5,000, up to $10,000 could be purchased through the SPMDTU.
Let me interject again. The reason that the SPMDTU decided to form its own insurance company is because back in the 30s, 40s, 20s, it was the common belief. First of all, we were described, and it's in here, by outsiders as being a mongrel race composed of indigenous blood and Mexican blood. I'm proud of that.
What's wrong with that?
I'm proud of that. But that's the way they described it. But the insurance companies at that time, they all believed that they could not grant us an insurance policy because we were all infected with tuberculosis. So then, the SPN goes, well, let's form our own insurance company. We'll insure our own members. I mean, that, just blatant racism. And there's many other examples.
I just wanted to add that the mongrel term was recorded in the U.S. Congress records describing our ancestors.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, well, I mean, like a great founder wrote in black people as, what, 3/5 human? Excuse me, what 2/5 of myself is not human? I mean, the more you look into it, all these blatant racist attitudes, laws, I mean, that's why these people came together. We need to protect ourselves. Protección, ilustración. These people were, at that time, I mean, they're more advanced than I was, Like I tell you, we thought we were back because we were coming out of the Chicano movement. We go like, these people have been doing it since 1900. You go like, wow, you eat some humble pie, you go like, these people are bad.
Yes, I'm glad that Hermano used the term insurance company. That's true. They had SPM, Sociedad, insurance company. So they had an employment agency, they had an insurance company, they had a burial fund, they had a workman's compensation fund of their own. Okay, and this is way before, the government was not doing this, okay, as we said, but neither were the employers. Okay, the employers were about extracting resources from this land, from the mines, the resources, the mineral wealth, and from the land in terms of commercial agriculture, large-scale agriculture. Okay, that was the motive, and not really the workers. So it was really just like the Cesar Chavez farm worker movement to unite farm workers. This was to unite the landowners and farmers and ranchers of northern New Mexico and southern Colorado that were still holding on and were entered into this economy. So after these programs were established, and there's even one of my own favorite that I teach my students nowadays. I teach rural community development at the University of New Mexico, and I still talk to them about some of these early types of mutual aid, mutualismo, you know. They're really fascinated with that concept because nowadays you don't find this concept of mutualismo in many other parts of the American society, you know. And here we have the stronghold for mutualismo. If we have it in this country, it's in Colorado and New Mexico. These traditions of los hermanos penitentes, that's a mutualista, okay? This society is a mutualista, okay? They even had literary and debate societies, this ilustración in the preamble. These, and keep in mind, these were farmers and ranchers, subsistence farmers and ranchers. Many of them, like my own grandfather, never even finished grade school, okay? And that's probably true of many of your grandparents, you know. And so here to think about that, barely literate, very little, and yet they were able to come up with that preamble, for example. Beautiful Spanish language, okay? So it's just amazing how they were able to, but the one I talked to my students about, basically, nowadays it would be called a revolving loan fund, okay? Basically a pool of money that if somebody needed seed capital in order to start a business, okay, or to expand their operation, they could go to the society and borrow money, okay, and just like a credit union. And then after they regained some of their funding, they were able to pay it back, and then they would loan it to another hermano. Okay, so that was a very unique concept for its time as well. So now they have a credit union. Wow. So what happened because of the success of all of these kinds of special, programs, the concilios grew pretty rapidly. Started in 1900 in Antonito, as we mentioned, but then another one in San Luis. Next one, Capulín. Next one, Mogote. Next one, Ignacio. Next one, Alamosa. And Ortiz. And then the Concilio Superior itself as the principal lodge, the headquarters lodge, in 1902. So you can see that during that period, there were quite a few additional councils expanding. The Constitution, the way we know it now, was formally established in 1911 with that preamble that was just read. But prior to that, they had a more informal document. It was just basic. It was called Reglas de Ayuda Mutua. Those of you that know the acequia governments, the acequia associations in southern Colorado and New Mexico, they have reglas. Well, so this society too. And those were the reglas de ayuda mutua, rules of mutual aid. And they were just very straightforward, declarative sentences about what the rules were that got formed into this Constitution. New Mexico established its first concilio locales in 1914, okay, the first one being at Madera, the next one at San Miguel, Las Tuzas, Costilla, Ojo Caliente, El Rito, Placitas, Ranchos de Taos, Nambe, and many others after that. I mentioned the 1930s, the period of the Great Depression. You might think that because of the harsh economic times, lots of people not employed, all over the country, and of course that affected the economy here too. Yet that was the period of greatest expansion and growth of La Sociedad. And if you stop to think about it, that's no accident, because people, the word got around basically, that's the way we interpret it when we put the book together. The word got around that this was a good society. This was a society that would help you in times of need. If you needed a job or you laid off, or if you needed emergency assistance, they were there, for you. And so by the 1930s, during the Great Depression, there were 54 concilios locales. 54, that's a lot. Okay, there were 31 in Colorado by 1937, and then 23 in New Mexico, all the way from and then also in terms of the regional character, all the way from Fort Collins, Colorado to Las Cruces, New Mexico. You found these local societies. Eventually in Utah in the middle and late 1940s because of the Bingham Canyon mines there, and then eventually Denver as well, to a total of 65 concilios locales. Then 1978, a very important year in the time line of this society. Prior to this, the members were all men. It was a fraternal society, and like many other fraternal societies around the country, they were men only. Well, in 1978, the membership decided, well, let's include women in our eligibility criteria, and that happened in the change of constitution. Meanwhile, there had been auxiliaries like la Sociedad Protectora Cooperativa, Auxiliarias Brutas Beneficiarias, AMB, y la Sociedad Femenil de Protección. And in terms of concilios locales, in 1984, the Ranchos de Taos, essentially the family members of the men in Ranchos de Taos started their own concilio number 20, and it was totally women and all women officers at the local council level. The men continued with their council, council number 18, which is still there, and the women's was council number 20. Eventually, the men and women united, and they decided to all become just one concilio, which is the way that they have it today. The year 2000 was the centennial anniversary, and that's when this idea of Guardiantes de la Cultura came about to honor that, to also include a sculpture, a bronze sculpture of the founder that's still there at the side of the building when you go through there. His only surviving daughter at the time, Celina Varela, was invited to come for the honoring and the, recognition of the statue, and also preparing a nomination to place the building in the National Register of Historic Places, which was done, it still is, and also the Colorado State Register of Historic Properties, which it still is.
Well, let me interject. I've said this in public before, and that's like Ed Vigil. He just finished being the representative, term limits. No? One of the sayings is that they have is Colorado began here. So these communities were the first Western European communities that in the state of Colorado, founded by your ancestors, your people. But yet, there's no public monument or memorial that commemorates that. We have the fort that champions the Indian killer Kit Carson, that assassin. We have Pike Stockade that commemorates a criminal activity. Sutherland Pike was trespassing and he knew it. Jefferson sent him because they were making plans to steal the land. And yet, in fact, they just pumped about $1 million into it. And yet, the first people, the first Western Europeans to start the great state of Colorado that happened to be here in the valley were ignored.
There are only two statues that we know of that honor a Latino or Hispanic person in the state of Colorado. One, the first one, and we had to pay for it ourselves, is our founder, Main Street Antonito, and the other sits right out there outside of our football field, Dr. Jovi Hill. Those are the only two in the state of Colorado.
We had to do it ourselves. I mean, the state doesn't recognize us.
Native of Antonito,
Right.
Jovi Hill.
So, tenemos que echarnos el caldo nosotros mismos, ¿no? Es como dije, no te eches el caldo porque te quemas. And then the other side of the saying is, pues si no me echo el caldo, ¿quién fregados me lo echa? So we have to champion ourselves, and we did by erecting a statue to the founder of the SPMDTU. And it was about time, because somehow the state and the nation, they ignore us. They catapult it over us. Our history doesn't matter. It's not being taught in the schools. I wonder how much is being taught here in institutions of higher learning, where it should be. So, I mean, it's about time that, I think when Ken was senator, he tried to introduce some things into the valley that finally acknowledged the first Western Europeans that happened to be Indio Hispanos that founded all these beautiful communities. All of you should be proud of that. We need to remember that. We need to champion that.
Briefly, I would like to acknowledge Mr. Larry Mondragon. He happens to be a nephew of the founder, and I have a question for him. Growing up in your household as a child in Antonito, what was said about our founder in the family, in your family?
Well, in the from what I remember, I was pretty young, but I used to hear him talk about Celedonio a lot, and they talked a lot about what him and the brothers, which Celedonio's brother Roman is my great grandfather, and they used to talk a lot about the jewelry part of it, the filigree jewelry, and you talk about our history and what we need to do to make people aware of what happened in this area. They were some of the finest jewelers in this valley, and there's a piece that I've seen over at the museum in Fort Garland, but I wish that there'd be some other pieces. They lived, my great-grandfather lived at the Lovatos Bridge there in Lovatos, and I hope that someday they'll do something there that will honor what he used to do there. He'd take care of the water levels at the river, and he'd done a very important job there, as well as he would bring the people that would come from Taos and that area, and he'd cross them so that they could go on back over, through San Antonio Mountain and that kind of stuff. He ran the little cable car. But I didn't hear very, very much about that. But as you folks talk a lot about how Celedonio was there kind of like before his time and some of the things that he done, of course his last name is Mondragon. And I went a couple of years ago to Mondragon, Spain, and I studied a little bit of the co-ops that are down there, which Mondragon, Spain, and that whole Basque area, the northern Spain part of the country, really is what kind of keeps the rest of Spain going. It's them people with a lot of drive, with a lot of entusiasmo,
So a lot of like the people here
I think
today?
that must be in the blood, of
Yeah, there's
just
Bascos here.
yeah, and then they have their own credit unions, exactly like what these guys were doing. And we went there, and they have their own corporations to make washers and dryers and electronics and technology. They have their own banks where they all pitch in. They all belong to the co-ops. They all work in cooperative. And as you talk, it just brings back a lot of that to me. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And this schooling that I went to was in a town called Mondragon, Spain.
Sure,
up in northern
very good,
Spain.
sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I just have a few slides to finish up my part of the presentation here. And that's the monument now, that's the birthplace of this La Sociedad. And as alluded to already, that's the birthplace of this raza, basically Indo-Hispano raza, that Hermano Rogelio was talking about. They're the ones that settled, 1598 at the confluence of the Rio Grande and the Rio Chama, and established Santa Cruz, established Ojo Caliente, Abiquiu, and then moved north to places like Trampas and Taos, and then eventually from Taos County and from El Rito. By the way, a lot of people from Conejos and Costilla counties originated out of Taos County or out of Rio Arriba County, the great majority. Okay, so this is the monument or the birthplace of these people, and it stands now as a registered historic property. It was built in 1925. They had a smaller meeting hall before this, and it's recorded in the book as to where that was. The women's auxiliary, by the way, the building next to it, which is still there. I saw it today. It's someone else is occupying it now.
Chavez, ¿cómo se llama?
Chavez.
Donald Chavez.
Donald Chavez bought the building.
That building was the women's society. And then they would borrow the larger meeting hall here because, as was said, they used to have skating here. They used to have boxing matches. It was a basketball court. It was a theater, still is a theater. There were performances there. There were títeres. Anybody remember that word, títeres? Puppets, yeah, okay. all of these meeting halls, by the way, not just only this one, but if you talk to our members in El Rito, and the society there, and also the members in Costilla, Ambassador to Spain, and Romero, I mean, he's very proud of the membership in his family in the Costilla Concilio. We'll see a photograph of it here. So we have a lot of places where these meeting halls, people tell us all the time, they were the social center of the whole valley, or of the whole region, or of the whole place. Ojo Caliente had a big dance hall. So did El Rito. So did, as many of the other places. Chama, the concilio there, was the election place,
Still
right,
is.
for many years. Still is. Okay, so these were the social centers, and you stop to think about it. There were no other social centers for people to gather, except for these meeting halls, throughout those 65 places in Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah. Sí, señor.
Dr. Rivera, I was just going to say, in terms of socializing, Los Sauces, 20 miles from here, had 2 salas, one right across the street from the other.
Which community? Los Sauces?
Los Sauces.
Oh, that.
So we knew how to socialize.
Did I-
Two dance halls right across the street from each other.
That's right, yeah.
Country road, it's our main street.
Yeah. Well, places like Taos, they had one in Taos, they had one at Ranchos, Española had at least a couple of them as well. So there were plenty of members, at the time. It shows you the need and importance of it at the time as well.
Can I ask you, please?
Si.
I know you had to restore
Sure.
the building to the original way and had to remove the mural, but who did that mural?
That's Fred Heberlein.
Okay.
And he's done many murals throughout the valley.
Sure.
But when we received monies from the Historical Society back in 2000 to restore the building, because that corner, the southwest corner fell on us. It's a good thing we already had the monies covered in. Hermano Tomás Romero called me because I was the president and I was teaching in San Luis. Ring in my classroom. Hermano, the corner fell. I can't. So anyway, but since we got the monies, they're very strict about restoring it back to its historical, the way it was historically. In fact, we just got some grants to put in windows, and we thought we were going to get, modern windows, and they go, no, you can't do that. You have to similar style of the original ones. So then the Historical Society goes, well, the murals were not part of the building, so they were removed or painted over. Well, no, the whole thing was removed because it had concrete stucco, and that's not good for adobe. So we used lime plaster.
The structure's adobe?
Yes, it's one of the largest adobe structures in the valley, and it served as a prototype for Sam's Covered Wagon in San Luis, and there was a building, remember the old Caleb's building in La Jara? This was a prototype that they followed after that. There's a description of it architecturally in this piece here, and Arnie Valdez, I have to acknowledge him. Arnie Valdez from San Luis, Maria Mondragon wrote the piece, but Arnie Valdez was the one that wrote the application for the historical designation. And also, we're giving out recognition. David Romero, would you please stand? He's the one that took this photograph. Thank you, David.
And what we were trying to do with that was we were trying to recreate.
Guerrero, what did I say? Oh, I'm sorry. I changed your name, Mr. Morgan.
This is what we were trying to, it's small, and maybe we can pass it around, but this photo was taken, looks like
1938.
1938, the 21st of January. So we were thinking, when was the last time that we ever, as a whole, took a picture like that? So that's what we were trying to recreate. But what I think is cool is the way they dressed back then. It was an important thing to go to these conventions.
By the way, the group of people there, that's just the legislative body. The structure of the organization follows the United States Constitution, right? It's executive, judicial, and legislative body. And that's the cuerpo legislativo of what I believe it says 1933. And look at how many people, they filled up the whole wall of the meeting hall. That's the same wall there. And it shows you the importance and significance of how seriously all of these members took, their duties. Okay, so that's the headquarters. I talked about the burial fund. Well, this was typically done too. When a member passed away, the society would have the funds, or they would raise new funds if needed, and then they would pay for the tomb, the burial tomb. And as you can see there, the initials of that member are there. I believe the last name was Chuleta, JVA, and it gives the birth and date and the day that he passed away. And at the bottom, if you can see it from where you are, it says SPMDTU. Okay, so that was done at that time.
As little kids in Antonito running around with nothing better to do, running through the cemeteries, chasing rabbits, whatever, we see these headstones. We're like, hey, another Mexican died tied up. That's what we really thought. You know what I mean? That as young kids running around, we didn't know better, But a lot of those graves in the cemeteries around the Antonito area, they're marked like that.
Okay. Well, here it is. It's that same photo that's being passed around. The Cuerpo Legislativo. I said 1933. It's 1938. Okay. So then, for one of the conventions, the last one we had in Antonito, sponsored by the local council, we went to that place, right? It took that photo to kind of reconnect with some of the history. This is the Código Ritualístico. There are copies of it here at the front table as well. Again, it shows you the serious purpose. This was first printed in 1926. Well, that was a long time ago, but for the members to spend the time in creating this document and using an old typewriter, I'm sure, and then putting it into a booklet and then paying a printer. Okay, they actually had newspapers that were the official newspapers of the SPMDTU. There's several of them here in the valley, in different places, and some in New Mexico as well. They were the place that would publish these books for the members. Members paid for it. And then they were the places that would make the resolución de condolencias. Every time a member passed away, there would be a resolución de condolencias, to the survivors of that member. So they did a lot. They make announcements for the conventions and so forth through these Spanish. They were all Spanish language newspapers of the time. Okay. Then here's the one in Costilla. That Ambassador Ed Romero. Anybody ever heard of Ambassador Romero? He was ambassador to Spain under the Clinton administration, Bill Clinton, and a great citizen. I used to work for him in one of his companies, and he has this photo hanging in his office. And perhaps when he went to Spain, he might have taken it with him, because I've seen it in the offices he had. He's a businessman, okay, and he has this photo, and he has the devisa that belonged to his uncle. It's kind of like the one that you have, one of the real antique ones.
Can you tell them more or less
See the devisa?
the purpose of the devisa? And you're going to get to it.
Yeah, I have one quick question.
Yeah.
No, let me, this was purchased by some man from California. We happened to catch it right before, now it's a private residence. And the way the bylaws state is that the local concilios own their property, their assets. And as the members either leave or they pass away, the last remaining members have the right to do with their property whatever they want. But if all of them pass away and there's remaining property in it, it reverts back to the Concilio Superior, to the society in general. So this man, this title on this property was murky and cloudy, but he took a chance anyway. And we just happened to catch it before. If you go to Costilla, you go to the plaza, right there in front of the Plaza Bar where it used to be. It's the building right in the middle, and now it's just a private residence. So we were able to capture the image before all that thing where, the sign was taken down.
And this is the one that Ambassador Romero told me. I wasn't even a member yet. I used to work for him. This is about 1980. And before I joined the university, and he told me that this was the social center, the life, of the community in Costilla.
But why didn't they fight to get it back if it belonged to the Superior?
No, I did, actually, what happened is the remaining members sold it. That there were still some, I don't know.
They shouldn't
some-
have been able to sell it.
Well, according to the bylaws, they can do whatever they want with their own property because each concilio owns, if they have a building, it belongs to the local council. If they have any money in the bank accounts, that belongs to the local council. In fact, when I was president, we got a check for $500 from Aguilar. The bank in Aguilar said, well, you know, these members of the SPMDTU had an account here, but they're all, we try to find remaining members and they passed away. So we're gonna send, they actually sent 500 and some odd dollars to the Concilio Superior in Antonito because there were no remaining members in Aguilar.
I should be a member there.
So basically, yeah, all of these photographs of these concilios locales, the meeting halls, those are the ones that Hermano Briones and Hermano David Salazar went around documenting them before they were lost, like that one. It was turned into a residence.
Well, this one here.
And then this one was totally erased. It was it's now a parking lot, right? And
The Oliver store, you've been to Ojo Caliente? Oliver's? Well, this used to be, they threw it down because they expanded and put in gas pumps. So they threw down the building and we just happened to capture it before it disappeared.
And the buildings from the outside are a little bit deceiving, but if you go inside these buildings, they were huge. They were enough to be not only a meeting hall, but a dance hall at the same time, as was the case here. I was told by, well, I think you guys, when they interviewed the members of Ojo Caliente, somewhere along the line, we learned that, anybody remember Dick Bills? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know, he had a show on KOB TV early on in the 60s. I was like 12 years old. And he used to come and sing here. Glenn Campbell used to be part of his group as well. So that was, you know, that was a big deal at that time, you know, for someone like that, television personality, to come and, you know, perform Western music and dance at that time. Here's just a close-up of this thing. And I can't resist but call attention to this work of art. This was done, and probably los hermanos here know who actually, the artist that created this.
Do you know Dennis Lopez?
Yes.
His father carved that.
No, his
Oh,
grandpa.
his grandpa, I'm sorry, his grandpa was the one.
See, and that, the
¿Cómo se llamaba? ¿Lariano o cómo?
no sé,
Algo así.
you see, Mariano, see, that was the first name. So it was, because we have it in the book, it captures the name of the artist thing. Just this symbolism of estrechémonos las manos, you know, it's in the preamble. It's also in the song, the hymn of the society, beautiful hymn that is performed at, you know, local council meetings and at the conventions as well. This is the one in Negrito that I told you, again, deceiving. It looks like just an ordinary storefront, you know, but if you look behind, you know, from the side here, it goes on for quite a way. So that was also a meeting hall and dance hall. This is the one at Nambe, it's still there. The members lease it out at the moment and they have their meetings somewhere else. This is the one here at the election
Chama.
at Chama. And this is a member.
Juan Olivas.
Juan Olivas, paz descanse. I got to know him. This is the inside of those meeting halls. This is one of the smaller ones in Rancho de Taos, and they still own this building. They're trying to decide how to remodel or refurbish or restore it somehow. They still own it. Then this is the inside of the big one. This is the Sala Superior. I mentioned that it has a theater, a stage, and a floor. And this is where the anniversary, the centennial anniversary, the society in the year 2000 was held, and this is during one of the breaks that were going on at the time. And then this was a convention in Rancho de Taos, some of the rituals of clasping of the hands during the singing of the hymn. These are the devisas, and maybe I can call on either of the two hermanos here to explain the devisas.
Well, there, you didn't bring yours. I did. Well, why don't you do yours? Because yours is a collector's piece.
Well, speak to
It
the significance of it in white, the divisa, and I'll talk a little
Well,
bit
you know,
about it.
it's just a badge that you wear to signify that you're a member, but you wear it like this in occasions like this where we're celebrating the society, and then it's reversible, so that when a member dies, then you reverse it, and you come, and that's really the essence of the society, is that you accompany your hermanos or hermanas, you know, to their burial place, and you pray for them. I remember Elias Rascon. How many of you remember Elias Rascon? He was a member. I don't know who died. One of the hermanos died here in Alamosa. And we went to the cemetery, and the priest was there. We put him in, and then the priest said a few prayers, and then Hermano Elias got up, and I remember, I'm going to paraphrase it, but he goes, "Oh Dios omnipotente, permite que algunas gotas sagradas de tu sangre se derramen sobre la tumba de nuestro finado hermano." Even the priest got jealous. You're outdoing me. Yeah? I mean, because they felt it. They felt it. And we talk about membership, and we should get a lot of people in. But you know what? If you don't feel it, you know, it's not going to happen. You have to feel it here, en el corazón. Tienes que llevarlo al corazón, si no, no va a trabajar. And that's what these people, that's the example they set. They lived the society. You know, they lived it. No, go ahead.
I would just like to add to what Rogelio was saying. Elias Rascon, a gentleman here from the community, railroad retiree, never owned an automobile, but was always on his bicycle. So you probably have relatives or family that mention him on occasion. He was a calificador, a prayer leader for our local council, and at 92 years of age, he was still bringing new prayers by memory to the meetings at 92 years of age. Numerous
Yeah,
prayers. But he never read anything. It was all a cappella, if he sang, if he did alabado, or it was all memorized
If
and
we were
practiced.
If we were doing a ceremony and somebody was reading from the book and he was listening to you, you know, and you were reading directly from the book and you made a mistake, he would go, "No, hermano, no." Sorry. No, he would. I mean, try to commit all this to memory. He was an amazing man, singer of alabados. He was a singer, on and on and on and on.
He did our entrega at our wedding.
Just a beautiful person. And I'm telling you, man, that priest, he got jealous of him. You're better than I am.
This is an example of, I like to think, one of the early devisas. And a lot of my hermanos in the SPM, they say, "Where did you get that? I'll buy it from you." They've offered me a lot of money for this. In the year 2019, this will be 100 years old. My uncle, my aunt's husband, her second husband, this belonged to his father. And 5 years ago, I got a phone call from him on his deathbed. He knew I wanted one of those. And I went to go visit him on his deathbed. And the tears that he cried when he gave this to me, he goes, "This is too important to be lost in a cajon in my house. My kids don't even really know the significance of this, but you do. So I'm going to give it to you, and you wear it in memory of my father." He was born in 1901. When he was 18 years old in 1919, he wanted to join the military, but for health reasons, they didn't accept him. So he told me is his father joined the SPM. And he used to ride his horse from San Rafael, which is 4 miles west of Antonito, going towards Chama. He used to get on his horse, and he'd wear this to the meetings. Other than it just being old with age, it has a tear in it on the side. But he told me the reason it got torn was his lifelong wearing this, riding the horse, it bouncing around, that it shredded on the side. I really shouldn't bring this out or wear it anymore, but that's how proud of it I am of it. And there's not too many of these like this that exist anymore. The ones that are old like this, they're in the ground with the hermano, never to be seen again.
Yeah, like
but there are some older ones like this, but this one's old.
Hermano Jean, you're wearing a contemporary one. See, look at the difference. It just didn't make them, you know, as elaborate as.
And it's from the Concilio Número 3 in Mogote, Colorado. And there's not even a concilio there anymore. So that's,
Okay. So here are the divisas in the color here, and one of them, Auxiliar de Mutuas Beneficiarias, that was the women's auxiliary, which is the building next to the Concilio Superior. This is a close-up of one of the pins. By the way, some of these pins, you know, were later put into rings by some former member. We're not sure exactly who, but they got the pins and they built them and put them into these 2 rings that you can come and see after we're done here. You're welcome to see all of our exhibit here. And it's interesting because when we celebrated the book and the book signing at the library at Antonito, the headquarters, the room was full, people all the way to the back. And at the end, a gentleman came by and showed these to us and said, well, look, I have these, I've been collecting these, I'm not even sure where I got them, I just bought them here and there. And, you know, I looked at him, I said, oh my gosh, you know, the founder and his brothers, Roman and Pilar and Nazario, were all plateros, they were all jewelry makers. And so possibly this ring, probably not made by one of them, but probably one of their descendants that still continued that craft. These are handmade rings. But the person who had them and showed them to us, he was not a member. He just came because he heard of the book signing.
Urbano Mares.
Yes, Urbano Mares. And I looked at him and I said, you know, gosh, we really need to preserve those and showcase them and the history of the society, very important. I'd like to buy them from you. I was going to buy them out of my own pocket on behalf of the society so we could save them. And you know what? Out of respect and honor, he said, you can have them. You know, you don't have to pay me. And that's the kind of respect that this person had for these, just like the you know, the visa that you received from your family. And you see that, you know, over and over again, this idea of respeto. When somebody passes away, I heard this from Hermano Rogelio when I first became a member. It's an honor, right? You've said that many times. To come and show your respect. Right?
Yeah.
Come and show your respect, you know, it never passes away. So, okay, so then, this is already toward the end. This was the Concilio, actually the Convención Bianual, the biannual convention that was held in Denver. I believe it was 2008, if I recall correctly, because they're on even years, right? 2008. And here's the Mariscal at the time, Hermano Adron Romero from Rancho de Taos, brother to Secretario Tesorero for a long time, Hermano Tomás. Nephew. And he's addressing the Concilio. You notice the banner that's there is the same banner of the Concilio Superior. It's always taken to all the conventions. And then this Concilio Local, which hosts the convention, displays their banner. And of course, that's the one from Denver. And at that time, new members were being initiated by Hermano Lucas Trujillo, who was the president of the Concilio, the Cuerpo Legislativo, and he was initiating 3 women members at that time. So with that, we'd like to open it for your comments. I mean, what ideas or what reflections, what kind of strikes you as important of all the things that any of us have said about the society?